Okay, welcome everyone to today's Kubernetes Office Hours, where we answer your user questions live on the air with our esteemed panel of experts. You can find us in the Office Hours channel on Slack. Check the topic for the URL for more information. Before we begin, let's get started by introducing ourselves. We'll start from the left. Yogi, please take it away.
Hi, my name is Yogi. I am part of VMware based here in Singapore, and I work with lots of users who are users of Kubernetes, and myself, I'm an avid user of Kubernetes. This forum helped me in past, so I'm just returning to the community.
Good morning. My name is Porco. I work with a government organization up in Canada implementing a platform on top of Kubernetes. And similarly, I received help from this awesome program previously, so I'm happy here to try and help out others in the community.
My name is David Flanagan. You'll find me on the interwebs as Raw Code. I am a CNCF ambassador and a cloud native and Kubernetes developer advocate at Equinix Metal.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Papandrea. People call me Pop. I am the director of open source ecosystem and community for a company called Sysdig. I'm also host of a show called the Popcast, and I'm also a CNCF ambassador. Well, that rolled off the tongue. And hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Noel. I mostly go by Frespo on GitHub and everywhere else. Mostly a cloud native enthusiast, hang around in multiple communities, trying to learn and help each other.
Hey everybody, my name is Mario Loria. I am a CNCF ambassador and currently a senior SRE at Carta X. I have been involved in one way or another and loved the Kubernetes community, the cloud architecture and technical components, as well as building resilient platforms. I really enjoy that passion, of course, in meeting wonderful people, helping out at KubeCon events and things like that. So I'm super excited about KubeCon coming in October. And I've also had my face featured on certain banners, as you can see in the Office Hours channel, as posted by Pop. So I'm kind of this semi-infamous figure, if you will, as well. So which I enjoy. So glad to be here.
Little known fact about Mario: he's the only person I've ever seen in one sitting eat probably a gallon of ice cream in one sitting. I just want everybody to know that I've met him in real life, so I just want everybody to know that stat.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Before we start,
What flavor was that?
Sorry, you go.
What flavor was the ice cream? Yeah, that's not from just the panel. That was actually a question from in discussion, not Kubernetes. It was Rocky Road, wasn't it? S'mores, dude.
S'mores, man. S'mores is where it's at. I'll kill a gallon of that, no problem. So let's get to the questions, though.
We've not finished the intro yet. Come on, calm down, everyone. Right.
Go ahead, David.
Thank you all. Okay, so before we start here, the guard rules. This is a Kubernetes event, so the code of conduct is in effect. Please be excellent to one another. This is also a judgment-free zone. Everyone has to start from somewhere, so please help out your buddy by having and providing a supportive environment in the channel. We will do our best to answer your questions, but the panel does not have access to your cluster. So of course, live debugging is not going to happen. However, we will do our best to explain what may be happening and get you moving on to the next step. Normally we provide shirts. However, the CNCF store is currently being replenished. We'll give you a shout out in our undying devotion for all the questions that you provide. Panelists, you are encouraged to expand on your answers with your experience and pro tips. And audience, you can help by posting URLs to the official docs, blogs, or anything else that may be relevant to the topic at hand. If you're not asking a question live, you can post your questions to the Kubernetes discussion forums available at discuss.kubernetes.io. You can also help us out by tweeting and spreading the word and paying it forward. This panel is made entirely of volunteers. If you want to rotate in and join us, please let us know. We'd love to have new people join in and help out. So each month, we take a brief moment to thank a member of the Kubernetes Office Hours volunteers for their continued effort and support of this program. This is the Mario edition. We want to thank you for all of your contributions to the Kubernetes community. 3 cheers for Mario.
Thank you very much. I love office hours. I love the community. I don't know. I think I really, at my core, love helping people, and this is one of the best forums to do so. We've had so many great questions and great thought exercises. I've actually gone back and thought about these things and implemented learnings that I've had just being on the panel and learning from some of the questions that have come in. So I don't know. Thank you, David, for continuing this. And many of you remember George Castro, who helped kick this off. And I know George personally as well. I could go to his house and beat him up right now. But no, it's been fantastic, and I appreciate the banner and all of that. So thank you for keeping this going. So.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for all your effort, Mario. Okay, now we can get started all. So if you are watching us live, please jump into the Office Hours channel on Slack. Start posting your questions. We will do our best to answer them as soon as we can. We also have scoured the Kubernetes discussion forums for some questions to discuss while we wait on your wonderful questions coming in. So question 1, team, we ready? Come on, some enthusiasm. Come on, Pop. Light us up.
Am I on the spot here? Okay.
No,
okay.
It's all right. I just wanted you to show a bit of enthusiasm, make sure you were still here. That was all.
I'm sorry. I was doing some social while we doing. I'm multitasking, baby. I also Mario's speech was so enthralling that I needed some time. This was good. It was good.
All right. Let's start with the first question. So we got a question here, and it says reference a single image pool secret from multiple namespaces. I have created a secret for Docker Hub authentication, and I'm referencing it in a pod via image pool secrets. I understand the recommended way to allow workloads in different namespaces to authenticate would be to create and replicate the secret in each namespace. So this person is looking to use a single image pool secrets across multiple namespaces. Anyone done this before?
Yes. No. I mean, I've solved this problem in different, I guess, the way I've solved this problem is, in general, when we used infrastructure as code, so Terraform, to provision our cluster. As part of that, we provision our namespaces as well for all of the namespaces that you require, and that also allows us to control things such as resource limits and quotas and things like that on namespace, so that it's consistent across the cluster. And as part of that provisioning, we also provision the secrets for image pool. So that's one solution that I've seen. Now, I know reading up, there is, I think, operators out there that can do this. And I think, I believe there is like Cert Manager has some sort of either operator or I don't know if it's a CLI or webhook, admission webhook or something that can help with this as well. But the solution that I guess we've used is as part of the provisioning of the cluster and the namespaces, it essentially creates those secrets across all of the namespaces.
Nice. I shared the link in the chat too. So there's a little known cloud native developer advocate known as Alex Ellis, responsible for OpenFaz, FASD, and a few other projects, Arcade. But he actually published this repository just a couple of months ago, and I remember seeing it and wondering who would want to do this. And I think the chat just kind of, this question has made me understand that people really do want to do this. So it's called registeredcrefs, and it replicates an image pool secret to all namespaces in the cluster. So that might be another good option for people to check out. And Mario, you posted a link as well, right?
Yeah, so that link I literally just found, and as soon as you read the question, I literally just Googled cluster-wide image pool secrets. I've actually had this problem before, and I've never really solved it. We've just kind of like put them in all namespaces, like in a for loop, right? But I actually think that we should, I don't know if maybe this is something we can do lower level, but like I think there should be, you've got pod security policy, which is now getting deprecated and getting pulled out eventually, but like something like that for service accounts where there's like this kind of default set of things that you want to exist in every namespace and every namespace to have access to, and it's cluster wide, maybe a cluster scoped object, right? So I think there's a real use case for it. But yeah, I think these namespace objects like image pool secrets is one that every single environment I've ever spawned, we've had a need for. this sort
Yeah.
of thing. So it's definitely
So,
common.
following up on that, another solution might be hierarchical namespaces. I think those have capability to propagate things, objects like secrets and service accounts across namespaces, if I recall
Okay.
correctly.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. I think it was featured on one of the TGIK episodes. They actually went through the thing. I mean, it's still fairly in alpha, I would say. Has some
Okay.
limitations, but exactly what Mario pointed out, the ability to sort of initialize certain things. And then the best part is that you could have different defaults for one set of namespaces than the other. So yeah, hierarchical namespaces. I was actually about to post that one. Somebody has posted the link in the chat. Thanks.
Yeah, because with like acronyms, HNS, you'll see it go by as well. I think is it alpha or beta? It's definitely early
I saw
and
it a
new.
while ago, so it's still early.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're actually starting to talk about it for our dev environments where we, instead of saying like we need a build cluster, we're actually trying to make more intuitive, isolated, repeatable, disparate environments with just using namespaces. And that's actually getting a lot easier now. You've got projects like vCluster from Loft that enable you to run like a K3s cluster actually in a namespace, isolated in a namespace. And so, there's a lot more that you can do now, and HNS is a natural extension of that. So yeah, great question, and I'm very interested in this use case.
They can report back to us as well. Like that would be awesome. Just so you see the follow-up of this, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I think another option would be like Mario mentioned, like doing it like a lower level, like the CRI configuration. So if it's containerd or CRI-O, you could actually set the secrets for the registry to use, but that means you need to have access to the node.
I'm going to do something that we don't often do in the office hours, but like kind of drill into this question a bit more and talk about the why. Like, I think we agree that this is something that we need, but it also kind of strikes me that the behavior may be that they're creating namespaces manually rather than through automation. And would this be a problem that goes away if they're automating the creation of the namespace and the provisioning of the secret? Would that just be the preferred approach rather than something in cluster? Or are there too many nuances here for us to discuss?
This is a great question, David, and I've been thinking about this. I think the problem is that most organizations, there's a line of demarcation where like the developer is doing something and then SRE is doing something else, and the things they manage are very different, right? A developer doesn't actually care. All they need is the registry. They don't care about how that registry is like orchestrated, instrumented in relation to how clusters are built and how things are stored securely, whereas the SRE team does. So SRE teams, from experience, we are the ones that are managing how things are connecting and interoperating, right? The developers, we're providing that abstraction away from them so that it kind of all just works by default, right? So we're abstracting away the complexity. We're that platform team. And I think that with that reason, when you then say, okay, developer, you can go create as many namespaces as you want, do whatever you need to do, instead of having this operational piece, right? A connectivity, secure access, whatever, be something they even have to think about. How do we apply it to the entirety of the cluster so they get it by default? I think that's where the question comes in. I think from automation and declarative models, of course, they could be like sourcing libraries, templating with Helm, things like that. I think a lot of it is like how big is the company? How far is the SRE team gone in, providing these components and the templating and things like that? And a lot of times it's not as far as you think. So, there's like that middle ground, like autonomy, and then, not wanting to deal with add extra complexity to whatever an end user might be doing. And when I think end user, it's like a developer or some engineer that's just trying to solve a problem. Let's remove infrastructure worry from their cognitive load, if you will. So
the other thing could be also the rotation aspect of it. So let's say you actually introduce an image pool secret, and it, like by policy, you need to rotate it, because I've actually seen that once in one of my clients where they needed to actually rotate the password, right? And especially if your registry has like some sort of integration into AD and all that, that makes it compulsory, right? I mean, obviously you have options of using robo accounts and things like those with some of the registry products, but in general, if you have to rotate it and if you have to do it across like multiple namespaces, that could be quite challenging. It becomes a thing of its own. then you probably have to set up automation. It is expected that each of the namespace actually has that automation in place. That becomes challenging.
Awesome follow-ups from both of you there. Thank you, Yogi and Mario. Do we have anything else to add to this question, or are we happy to move on? I'll take that as a move on. All right. All right. The next question is: pods always deploy on the same node? Hi all. I have a curious behavior on my JKE regional cluster with 2 hosts. Each time I try to deploy an application with Helm, a simple pod manifest, or kubectl run, the pod will always deploy to the same node. At the end, the node uses 80% of the CPU, whereas the other node consumes only 30%. I have checked all the parameters on the second node and everything appears to be correct. I thought about restarting the control plane, but as it is managed by Google, I cannot do that. Has anyone experienced this behavior before, and what could it be? So to surmise that, they're trying to run a workload on their JKE cluster, and it is always being scheduled to the same node in a 2-node setup. What do we think that could be?
So one thing that I have actually seen is the node was not ready. The other time the node was actually tainted. So just need to check if the node is tainted. So you probably have to either untaint the node, or you have to put the tolerance on the pod definition for that. That's the only thing that I have seen actually.
Yeah, I think what you're suggesting there is that we really need to run a kubectl describe on that node and see if there's any information there that will help them understand why the scheduler's omitting it or neglecting it in some fashion.
I think we need some valuable detail here, and that's like what version this is. Maybe this is like a version issue, like that. I've seen this where maybe they need to like auto update. Again, GKE has that capability of doing that. That's first and foremost. And I wish Archie was here with his background so he can help us with this, because I'm sure he's probably seen this in the wild. But that's kind of my thought process there when I was reading through that one.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I can give some kind of generic pointers, like I don't know specifics about GK, but like, are there any, like if there's only 2 nodes, I don't know if GK deploys certain things to one node, like system components, so there may be like taints in one node. Perhaps if there may be different hardware, maybe there's something with that application that requires specific hardware, so it's going to the other node. Yeah,
I can't recall on GKE when you say get nodes, does it list the master node as well, or it doesn't?
It does not.
No, it would not.
No, because they're obfuscated. Right?
Then it would be 2 worker nodes, right? If it's 2 nodes, then it's 2 worker nodes, I believe.
2 worker nodes, right? I'm guessing a node group that's 2 worker nodes, and EKS is the same way. The API nodes are completely abstracted away from you. This is actually interesting to me. I might go back and do a little more research, because I'm interested on if you can, and maybe this is just viewing the logs of Kubescheduler, which I don't think you'd have. I don't know if you can get that from the API even in GKE, but like, how did the scheduler come to that decision? So, when you go to schedule a workload, obviously the scheduler is generating a cost value for each node, and the node that wins gets the workload, in the thinnest way to describe that. And I'm wondering if there's a way that you can dig into that and see how the decision was made, and then you can figure out the nuanced pieces that were being considered and why the cost for that node is higher than the other node, right? I'd be interested in that. I'd also be interested if you added a 3rd node, what would happen as well. But if anyone has any projects where like you can get like a UX centric way of seeing what the scheduler is doing, how it's thinking about the decision.
You can do that through Stackdriver, Mario. Like you can do that through Stackdriver. Yeah. So you can stream those logs into it. I mean, you can stream the audit log capabilities there, but also like you can stream like anything that's happening from the scheduler. I didn't understand this concept of regional cluster, right? I know the concept of like, is this, a specific region that might be the issue as well? There's so many factors here without having the detail. But again, in terms of the scheduling process, you can actually go into the logs, and they actually have a really cool way for you to like query the logs for specific data points. I think that are better than other things that are out there.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. I can tell you, I'm pretty confident EKS doesn't really have a similar, and that's the world I live in. So, but that's awesome to hear.
All right.
Yeah. So one point on the question is it's a simple manifest, like it's a krun command. So they cannot put a whole lot in there, right? So my sort of thought process there is most likely the second node has some sort of no schedule tag on it.
Yep. All right.
The only way to sort of resolve that is like remove that label. What's the root cause for that? It could be many things.
But there's another factor there too, Yogi. Again, I'm looking at this, like it might be the specific machine type. We don't, again, it's like, this is where when you all are submitting some questions, the more detail, the environment details for us to put in there. I mean, there could be a specific machine type that's being used, or maybe they have app nodes that are larger where they've said, okay, well, we're going to add another, like I know they have to be at parity from the machine type perspective, but that might be something to factor in. But that's another thing, y'all, when you're, not to ask so much of you, but if you can like add environment details, it really helps us out.
And post the YAML if possible. In fact, just provide as much context as you can. It really helps us narrow down the scope of the problem.
Help us help you.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. So we're going to move on to our next question, a wonderful persistent volume claim question. So volume issue when installing Prometheus using a Helm chart. I have a Kubernetes cluster comprised of one control plane node and 2 worker nodes. The cluster was bootstrapped using kubedm. I'm trying to install Prometheus in this cluster using the Helm chart as follows: Helm install Prometheus. All right, cool. However, they are running into a problem. Prometheus server and the Prometheus alert manager pods remain pending. Following a tutorial, they're creating the persistent volumes manually. The YAML is in the question there in the HackMD for anyone following along. I will not read that line by line. However, in the end, when they run kubectl get pv, it seems that the Prometheus server is claiming the alert manager volume. How do I solve this problem? So let me try and surmise that. Like, oh, we lost Mario. All right. So it would appear that this person is creating the persistent volumes manually, and then the Helm chart is creating the claims, and the claims are grabbing the first volume that they can. I don't think off the top of my head there's a way to be selective with that. So maybe we, oh, hey, Mario's back. Maybe we can talk about how does that happen? Does anyone know how that happens? When you create a persistent volume claim, it checks the available PVs. How do you make sure it collects the right one?
So doesn't it find one that meets all the requirements of the PBC? Isn't that the first decision? And then I'm guessing there's some sort of pinning you can do. I actually don't know very much about PPCs, but in my light knowledge, you've got a storage class, a PV, and then a PBC. And the PBC is just considering what PVs are there that can be used to satisfy the requirement. But I think I've got to believe there's something that you can say, I actually want to affinity, like I want this PV, I want whatever this storage backend is, right? But I don't know. That's a great question.
So yeah, you're completely right, at least to the best of my knowledge here. It's not great either. But when you create the claim, it's going to find the first persistent volume that matches the capacity and the read-write modes, and etc. I don't think
default, most likely this is the missing default storage class on the cluster. The cluster doesn't have a default storage class.
Okay, so let me dig into that, because you're suggesting that because they're creating the PVs manually, which I don't think is something really any of us would normally do, right? We'd require the storage class to create the persistent volume based on the CSI driver, and then that would connect all the dots for us. I mean, I don't often create PV YAMLs.
You can create a PV. That's fine. You can create a PV. You can reference it in your deployment, in your pod definition. You could reference it, but I think the challenge here is that the PVC that Prometheus is asking for, it must be asking for some storage class. And this particular PV does not have a storage class.
Well, they both have the same storage class.
Sorry, where is it written? I didn't
it's using the default one, which is what happens when you emit the value on the storage class name. So both of these persistent volumes are using the default storage class within the cluster. And then the problem is the claim is grabbing the wrong volume. And I believe that's because of what Mario said, and there's no way to pin the volume and the claim together until they've been
No,
claimed.
it just does it by the node affinity, right? So it's going to do it by like what it's been assigned. Like, so I don't think you can do that without using, like you said, some type of, some other external kind of tool like Kasten or one of those other tools to be able to like really do that. I think. I don't know. I've never seen that, in like you said, I've never went to that nth degree and done that. I just always trusted the PV and the PVC to do the work for me.
So I'm just looking at the spec now. Like a PVC, there is a volume name in the spec which you can specify the PV. So I don't see the PVC definitions here. But I believe that the solution here is really manually create the PVC and map the PVC to the specific volume, like to the PV, using the volume name in the spec, and then you can use that specific PVC in the correct component for Prometheus. I think that's a solution.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Today I learned I didn't know you could put the volume name in the claim. So there we go. I think that's the simple answer. Well done. Smashed it. All right, I'm assuming that's going to be a setting on the values file for the Helm chart. I'll assume there's a way to connect the dots there. So you'll need to look into that. Thanks, Barco. All right, anything we want to add to this one before we move on?
The output, it was also missing even the default storage class. It is just saying like empty right in the outputs in the hack empty. So I believe even just creating a default storage class, most of the community Helm charts just like manages all the PV and PVC creation. So if there was like a default storage class defined which satisfies a host path mount, it should just get all those things figured out automatically rather than trying to like create all those stuff manually.
All right, awesome. Okay, we have one question live in the officers channel, which I'm going to remove myself from answering because I know nothing about embedded and edge, but I'll throw it out there to people anyway. So, do you see Cloud Native supporting the embedded edge development world in future days? Anyone close to embedded or edge?
Not close, but I mean, I definitely hear enough about it because, like, if you see right now, it's pandemic. Obviously, not many. I work with a lot of banks, and not many banks have branches open at the moment, right? Almost everywhere in the world. So, but those kind of use cases, right? They call them remote office, branch office kind of use cases. Embedded, not so much, but edge definitely. So those kind of logistics companies, they're using it today, edge computing devices, right? So definitely there is going to be more and more things happening in the edge side. I see like various vendors are actually doing a lot of work on the edge side. I thought there was some sort of SIG or maybe community post also a while ago around the whole edge.
Yeah, I think we do see more and more embedded and edge stuff in the the KubeCon keynotes and surrounding sessions. And I see Mario and Barco have jumped into the thread as well. Do you just want to add in a few thoughts here?
I was just going to say, when I signed up for KubeCon, the amount of day zero events that we have now is astounding. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I think that lends to the amount of interest around many different tiers and scopes of applying cloud native in so many different layered ways, if you will. So when you say, is this going to get bigger? Absolutely 100%, right? Like if I could invest in a CNCF cryptocurrency, I would. I'd be like all in actually. I think that because of the community, because of the growth, because of the Kubernetes project at its core, and then the projects like KubeEdge and K3S, like I think it is bound to be kind of, at least if you're a company solving a problem, cloud native is going to be a big part of the way you think about solving that problem, right? It's going to be at least in your mental mindset of like an option, so some road you can go down. So I would say yes. I would say keep in tune to kind of what the CNCF is working on, the landscape, and of course other applications as well. It looks like this article on the CNCF blog is from Huawei and how they're using KubeEdge, I think. So we're seeing different companies start to come into the landscape and say, like, look at this is how we're doing it, and sharing, and then collaborating as well. So very interested in this. I also don't know much about like IoT and Edge, but I think like it's definitely becoming a bigger deal as we see more devices and companies doing different things. So.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So thank you for your question, Anushit. We hope that helps. Check out KubeEdge. There's also a link to KCS there and lots of stuff happening at KubeCon. Although I feel like we now need to cancel office hours, and this is now a planning session for KubeCoin. So someone go buy the domain. Let's get the org set up on GitHub. And then it's a real project.
We know a guy or gal. Yeah, let's make it rain.
KubeCoin. All right. Next question, scraping metrics from outside of the cluster. I have Prometheus running inside of a Kubernetes cluster, and I want to scrape the metrics from an external EC2 instance so that I can view everything in the same dashboard. I know that I need to use some exporter on the EC2 node, but how do I get these metrics into the cluster?
Must not talk about product. Okay, so go ahead. I mean, look, there's a lot of things you can do with PromQL, right, to be able to merge a lot of these metrics out and all of that. So I would definitely take a look at that as a capability, right? There's a lot of projects too. There's things with like, I think there's Lens, which is not the IDE Lens, but there's like, Prometheus allows you to, take this. But like, I think there's ways you can take, exported data from multiple places and use PromQL to be able to join it. And there's a lot of examples out there if you just, Google that. So, yeah, I don't want to kind of embellish the more detail there, but that's kind of what I'm thinking.
I think the one part of that question is around the exporter. So I would basically use node exporter for that. I would actually run a node exporter on the EC2 instance. So that would actually expose an endpoint and configure the endpoint in the Prometheus to basically scrape that EC2 endpoint.
Yeah, so two different approaches there with Federation from POP and Yogi just saying run the exporter and have the Prometheus in the cluster reach out of the cluster to it. I think they're both really valid approaches.
And again, I don't want to show product, but you can join all of this data together using Sysdig, but you know what I mean? Because we literally have done this because I've seen this at multiple places where you're taking these data points, right? And you're trying to, again, having it one single dashboard, it's real, you can kind of manage that, but then you have to manage a back end and all that fun stuff. I'll stop, but it's top of mind for me because we just had a release. So, or they did, excuse me.
Awesome.
So,
on you go, Barco.
Yeah, I guess just kind of thinking from AWS perspective, all of these metrics and logs end up in CloudWatch. So I wonder if there's a way to, I know Grafana, if you're using Grafana for your dashboards, you can probably then integrate that with CloudWatch directly. So perhaps there's no need to even do this integration to Prometheus. I wonder if that's just a way to skip that problem. And there's also CloudWatch has CloudWatch streams. So I wonder if that's probably another approach that you can use to ingest. And I suspect, I just did a quick Google, there seems to be like a Prometheus exporter for CloudWatch. So that may be another way to just pull those logs directly from CloudWatch into Prometheus.
I just put it in channel.
Yeah, I also went and just checked the service discovery definition in Prometheus. There's actually an EC2 service discovery in Prometheus.
There you go.
So I think if the intent is to converge all the metrics into one Prometheus instance, that's another way. Like you can then just skip the whole node exporter idea also. So one less component to maintain.
Nice, great suggestions there from across the panel. Anything else before we move on? No, got it. All right, next question. When is container statuses set? Hello, everyone. We've observed that at some point in the creation of a new pod, the field spec status, container statuses, is not set. Is that something that is expected? We are thinking that this is only true for a small amount of time, but it's caused by a bug. It's causing a bug in the library we are using. So the challenge here is they're using spec.status.container statuses on the pod in some way, and it's not always available. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I don't know much about how those status things are set at all. And I know there's some work around trying to identify, like, consolidate the status meanings so that they're kind of consistent, because like they might use different statuses for different resources that might mean different things, but I have no idea how they're set at all. Yeah.
So I believe the kubelet sets that value on the status based on feedback from the container runtime. That's all I know. I'm out now. That's it.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the pod lifecycle. So in the pod lifecycle, very specifically, there's a container states section, right? And it only describes waiting, running, terminated. So I believe it would be sometime before it even gets right after getting scheduled on a node, and before it is picked up for actual execution. That's probably the time. But I'm just curious, when does the library actually kick in? It's like, is it some sort of operator which is looking at the API events, or is it like just another container on the pod?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's hard to know there's not a lot of context in this question, but it sounds like a bug in the library, right? Like it should be, if this container status isn't there, it should probably just try again in a few hundred milliseconds or microseconds or whatever, and just ignore it and try again. Like I'm assuming there's definitely some point when the pod sandbox is created before the container status exists, and the library should just handle that, I would hope. So maybe
I was gonna add to. I was gonna say exactly what David was gonna say. I think that there's like some small tiny period there where the pod is being created, but the containers are not yet created. And I actually go back to the original kind of like premise for this library, and what they're trying to achieve is, why are you checking the container statuses instead of the actual pod status? If the pod is the unit of work, and when the pod is running, maybe like you should be looking at like the pod phase or something else to give you better signal about like what the workload being ready to service requests, right? And the many containers could be in that pod. So I'm interested in that use case. But I would say, yeah, if that key doesn't exist, well, the containers probably aren't in existence. Although I'd be interested to learn about like more about that field if you deep dive into the API and status. If that field is actually a reliable field, because maybe in a next release, it's not used in the same way as well. So is that a reliable piece of information that you can depend on? So.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Last chance. Cool.
Trying to find a
KubeCon
talk. Sorry, yeah, I'm just trying to find a KubeCon talk that kind of explained this issue. Like there was a talk where they had like an issue with the status being set late or something. It's probably like very old talk. I can't find it. I'm trying to find it. But it talked about this exact specific scenario, but I can't kind of find it. I'll try. If I find it, I'll just put it in the chat.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Darnell. All right, let's jump on to our next question, which is a little bit of confusion using the FromFail flag on creating a config map. So I am currently getting into Kubernetes. When creating config maps, is it possible to create a config map with key value pairs from inside the file? So there's some YAML example here in the HackMD. Please check that out. But essentially, they have a YAML file and they want to create a config map using the keys in the YAML file as keys in the config map. However, when they use FromFail, it's storing the entire file as the contents and inside a single key in the config map. Does that make sense to everyone, or do you want me to repeat that?
Is that a CKA question?
Maybe a CKAD, yeah.
I think I understand what they are trying to do. It's they are basically taking the content of a YAML file and they want the keys in the config map to be the keys from the YAML file. That looks like some text manipulation would help. I mean, just putting a header on top of the YAML file itself for config map would do. I don't know a way of actually setting that up.
Yeah, it's like a chat. Actually.
That's like ITT or something like that. It's like some YAML manipulation tool or something.
I don't think FromFile works that way. I think FromFile by default, like the file name is going to be the key in every scenario, right? Because a config map, like it's kind of just like you have a file with config inside of it, and that's just kind of a standard text file sort of thing. And so that is the value, and the key is the file you've passed in. However, I don't know how to do it. Like I'm actually interested in that. And even if, or is that an anti-pattern that's not actually intended, right? Like you're not really intended to control the keys there necessarily for whatever reason. So I'm interested, or maybe you can't do it on the command line. It's something you have to, write out in the spec. So I would love to know that.
Yeah, you're right.
Pass in a key.
Sorry, Indigo.
Sorry. Yeah, so I think you can pass in a key when you're creating, like you can add like dash from file equal to foo equal to bar, but it still would put the contents of the file under the same key. It won't do it like manually.
Yeah,
the other
they've
option
given
would
the
be
example.
right,
They've actually like. Yeah, go ahead. You were saying something. I paused to actually listen to you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think the other option is like something like Yogi mentioned, right? Like some kind of like scripting or something to do it manually, or generate the like append the content of the file to the key inside using something like JQ or YQ.
Yeah.
But
like I've always thought that it was from literal, right? So like you have that from literal where you can assign, like have it be the full, it always is going to look for the context in the from file unless you do like some type of environment variable, right? And then you'd have the environment variable kind of defined. And and again, the only like stuff I've done from config file perspective is like license keys and stuff like that for specific things, right? So like, or like, specific settings for, internal config for a pod, right? But it's going to be like an all or nothing thing. But I kind of agree with Mario in that it might be somewhat of an anti-pattern, right? It's kind of the opposite. He's looking to get a specific part of the file, which I would always script as like an environment variable thing, right? Versus have it be, because it's a holistic thing.
So kubectl create config map has two other options that might be possible here. So there's from literal, which is you're providing it on the command line, and you can specify explicitly the key and then the value. And there's from mfile, like Pop is talking about, which I wonder if you did it from an mfile, if it would take your key value pairs. I could be wrong but I'd assume it's considering like environment variables, a key value sort of thing. So I would try those and see what happens. I feel like this is a great CKA question though, because it's something like I feel like I should know, and it's like basic, but.
Yes, I think the from mfile is a good approach. You would have to change the contents to be what, POSIX would expect, or Yogi's other answer as well, which is just to, you have the YAML, just wrap it in a config map spec and it'll work. So I think they're both great solutions. Hopefully that helps a lot. So thank you everyone there. Really good. Okay. Is this our last question? Oh, yep, potentially. Okay, so we've got this question here. So what happens when a volume mount and a Docker image both share a path? So this person says, I'm not very clear on this topic and I keep finding myself having more doubts as I read. That's my day.
Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man comes out, and then you have to bring the key to Gozer. Oh wait, well no, that's Ghostbusters plot. Sorry, I got nothing.
Okay, so let me just summarize. This is quite a large question in the HackMDs. I'm going to kind of summarize this based on what I can see skimming here. They have a Docker file, and in that Docker file, they seem to be exposing or copying files into a directory. However, they're then using volume mounts in their deployment YAML to mount something from some volume host path or config map or whatever into the container, and they want to know what takes precedence there. Anyone got any thoughts there?
I think
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm still reading it.
All right,
So-
go for
I
it,
think
Noel.
the right solution to be not to overwrite whatever the content that is already in the Docker file was to use the subpath option when you're doing a volume mount. That's what I do to actually add an extra file. But if it's a folder, I think it would always get overridden unless you specify all the content of the subpath manually. I haven't tried that scenario, so I could be wrong about that. But if you just want to like add a single file to that volume, you can use the subpath option in volume mounts.
You're 100% right. I have actually been burnt by that. So I know. Yeah. So one thing that I learned, even like I didn't even learn it during my CKAD time, was when you mount something on an existing volume, and this was not even like a volume, it was more of a config map field that I wanted to mount as a file inside the container. Yeah, you can't do partial mount. So it's like if you have an existing directory, it will be just like it will be shadowed. It's not overwritten, but it will be shadowed by the volume mount, whatever that volume mount is. So I absolutely agree with your solution around having a subdirectory. Typically, for example, if you the use case that I had was putting some sort of addition was it an init, or it was one of those processes where I had to add something extra. Sorry, Nginx configuration. So Nginx configuration, I wanted to add a virtual host, but I didn't want to overwrite the existing configuration. So because it has the conf.d kind of folder, I mount stuff in on that instead of into this slash etcd. So something like that is better because it'll be shadowed. When you mount it, whatever was actually there on the container layer in the overlay file system, it'll be shadowed.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right, so we are all out of questions. So I think we'll just wrap this up. Anything else? No? All right, okay, cool, got it. Okay, so thank you all for joining us today for today's Kubernetes office hours. Thank you to everyone who asked a question on the Kubernetes discussion forums or live in the Slack channel. Thank you to the following companies for supporting the community with developer volunteers: Google, VMware, CartaX, Equinix Metal, and Sysdig. Lastly, feel free to hang out in the office hours channel afterwards. If the other channels are too busy for you and you're looking for a friendly home, then you're more than welcome to pull up a chair and hang out. We will be back at the same time next month. Until then, have a great month. And thank you all. Bye.
Thanks,
Mario
everybody.
Edition
Bye.
out.
Yes, thank you.
Mario
Have a good one. See everybody in a month.
All right, bye.